Great pleasure joining us, Treasury Secretary, Mr. Scott Bessent. Mr. Secretary, thank you for coming. I know you're in court today to listen to the Supremes talk tariffs. What'd you take away from it? Give us some hints, please.
Larry, I came away very optimistic. The Solicitor General presented a strong case for the president's use of the IEEPA, the emergency tariff powers, that President Trump has used to balance trade, to negotiate with the Chinese on fentanyl, to secure rare earth magnets, to get the Indians to stop buying Russian oil. And that the Solicitor General made a fantastic case that the purpose of the tariffs is to rebalance global trade. We were in an economic emergency. We were near a tipping point, and you and I know exactly what that looks like. And President Trump has brought the U.S. back. On the other side, I thought that the plaintiffs almost embarrassed themselves. They clearly didn't understand foundational economics. They didn't understand the trade policy they were talking about. And I'm very optimistic after listening to the questions at SCOTUS that the IEEPA ruling is going to come President Trump and this administration's way.
Secretary Bessent, what was your impression of the justices? What did you take away from the justices? Body language, actual questions. I mean, who knows how they're going to think and work this through? Well, when you got out of the room or out of the court, what were you thinking?
I was very impressed with some of them, with their, obviously broad and vast knowledge of legal history. Many of them had a very good understanding of the economic emergency, and many of them understood what President Trump was trying to do, in terms of trying to rebalance. And I think they came away understanding that the purpose of the tariffs, the revenue, the tremendous amounts of revenue that we are taking in, is coincident, and the real goal here is to rebalance our trading relationships and bring home manufacturing. So, as I've said many times before, that a proper tariff policy will be a shrinking ice cube, that we will start out with high tariffs, but as the economy gets rebalanced, the tariffs will go down, manufacturing will increase in the U.S., and our domestic tax take will go up. And I think the justices understood that quite well.
Yeah, I mean, it's to some extent, I agree with you. To some extent, the revenues, the tariffs revenues are a byproduct of this new approach to regulating imports. I mean, I think that's it. Now, did they say anything about, how the revenues, like they're going to be very large in year one, okay? Whatever your number is, Mr. Secretary, 300 billion, 400 billion, I don't know what the right number is. How do they think, if they rule against this IEEPA, how do they think you're going to get rid of those revenues? How do you think you're going to turn them back? I mean, it would be a monstrous, impossible task.
Well, again, Larry, I'm optimistic, and we don't want to go into it, but I'm confident that the president's emergency powers, that we did have emergencies. The president has dealt with them. He's continuing to deal with them, and we will cross that bridge if we come to it, but I'm confident we won't have to.
So one other question. Did the Solicitor General raise the point that foreign policy is really this other side of the same coin as trade policy, that the two are inseparable, and that the commander-in-chief, of course, has the play on foreign policy, that's part of his inherent constitutional authority? Did that come up? Did justices react to that?
100%, and even the other side admitted. I mean, Larry, in a moment that was bordered on the absurd, one of the justices, I believe it may have been Justice Kavanaugh, they asked one of the plaintiff's attorneys, so what you're saying is the president has the ability to put on a 100% embargo, but he doesn't have the ability to put on a 1% tariff. Mm. And the plaintiff's attorney was forced to agree, make an absurd statement.
I mean, almost every deal, I try to follow you. I don't know all the details. but let's say the Indo-Pacific coming back from Southeast Asia and so forth. So many of those trade deals, including one might say China, but certainly the other countries, Cambodia, Malaysia, Thailand, and so forth, Australia, so many of those deals have foreign policy components, or even defense policy components, or even defense policy trade components.
Well, Larry, as you and I have talked about, economic and security and national security are linked, and they cannot be separated. The president has ultimate control over national security. He has the control over foreign affairs. And, again, this reminds me of, I think you remember in President Trump's first term when people tried to say, oh, well, the president is allowed to secure the border, but he can't build a wall. Well, how can you secure the safety and soundness of the United States, this emergency situation that we were in, whether it was fentanyl, the rare earths, the near tipping point we were at on the economy on these trade deficits, if the president can't put up a tariff wall, it clearly lies within his authority.
So, all right, two more things, Mr. Secretary. You're very kind with your time. Two more things. One, I can't resist. I have to ask you what you think about our new socialist mayor of New York City. What you think?
Larry, I left in 2020. Bill de Blasio chased me out. I couldn't take it anymore. And I want to congratulate the people who voted for Mamdani. And welcome to Caracas on the Hudson. Welcome to Caracas on the Hudson. I don't know who's going to be more responsible for the bump in Miami real estate, Maduro or Mamdani. And I know you've hedged. You've got an apartment in New York and a house in Connecticut. I'm told that Connecticut realtors are already very busy. And look, I had 35 great years in New York. I wish New York the best, but I think that they've chosen the worst. And people have to learn from experience.
Yeah, I'm afraid so. There's some wacko things, as though we don't know that socialism is going to fail. Last one, another point, though. Let's leave Mamdani to his own problems right now. I think that the president's speech today in Miami, speaking of New York City and a socialist mayor, his speech in Miami was absolutely terrific. It was about the economy. It was about economic growth. And, Scott, here's my point. He's underwater on these economic polls. And I don't see any reason why he should be underwater, because he's already, in 7 or 8 months, you're looking at 4% economic growth. And his inflation, his prices are, way, way, way below. I mean, just one number, grocery prices up 23%. 23%. During the Biden years, okay? That's extraordinary. And right now, even Mr. Trump's, his entire CPI is only up 1.7%. In other words, prices are contributing to real wages already just in the first 7 or 8 months, okay? But there has to be a constant litany and discussion. The president said this himself. He said, you gotta go out and tell folks, you gotta be specific, you gotta have details. Now, even as great a communicator as he is, he can't do it alone. And even as good a communicator you are, and you're handling the trade policy, which is a terrific thing. I'm just saying, other parts of the Trump team have got to get out there and start talking to folks about the numbers, inflation, unemployment, growth, jobs, real wages. How about explaining, the components of the one big beautiful bill? I'm sure I don't think the public still understands all that's in there. The more you get out, then the less the left-wing media is going to have. They're trying to step in where the Trumpians left an opening, and I wouldn't leave any openings.
Well, Larry, I couldn't agree with you more. And look, the mainstream media tried to hide all the problems during the Biden economy. They called it a vibe session. They said, oh, working Americans don't listen. You're silly people. You don't understand how good you have it. It's never been so good. But, they know what they were feeling. So a couple of things, Larry. One, I think 2026 is going to be a gangbuster year, and Americans will feel it in their pocketbooks. in their homes, and they will know that the economy is strong, that they are doing well with the one big beautiful bill. And you and I were very early proponents for doing one bill, because could you imagine where we would be right now with these maniac Democrats if we hadn't, if we had other parts of the tax bill to pass. But the good news is we got it across on July 4th. But the thing with the bill, it's beautiful, but it's big. So at Treasury, we are going to start a every other week cadence of, we call it extract and educate. So we are going to extract a very important piece from the bill and then work to educate the public, educate the Republican congressmen, senators, the governors, working people all across the country on what is in the bill and how great it is for Americans. The third thing, Larry, is that, as you may know, I am also not only the Treasury Secretary, but I am the IRS Commissioner, and I can see what is happening with withholding. So the president's working class, the tax policies, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, deductibility on auto loans of American-made cars. No one has changed their withholding for 2025. So in the first quarter of 2026, working families are going to see very good refunds coming out. They will change their withholding on January 1, so they will get real wage increases. And as you said, inflation is under control, and I think the economy is going to go gangbusters. But I couldn't agree more. We got a great story to tell. We're going to get out there and start telling it. And I think that Americans are really going to start feeling it toward the end of the year, but especially in the first quarter with the refunds, with the change in withholding.
I've seen estimates, Secretary. I've seen estimates of those withholdings up to $200 billion. $200 billion, as high as that. And you know the old saw, you know this. If a tree falls in the woods, but no one's there to report it, it never happened. So I'm just saying, go out there, report, report, report. The president gave one heck of a great speech today. And as usual, he's the communications leader.
And Larry, it's these working class campaign promises that the president made. Many people in the party were not in favor of them. Every Democrat voted against them. That eventually Republicans united around them, but it was the president's leadership that is going to make sure that we have what I call parallel prosperity. Wall Street, we can see from the averages, has done great 4 years. Now it's time for Main Street to catch up. And with parallel prosperity, Wall Street and Main Street can do great together. And I think 2026 is going to be Main Street's year.
All right, Main Street's year. I hope so. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, appreciate your time very much. Thanks, sir.
Good to see you, Larry.
All right, good to see you.